The following is an abridged, narrated version of the play Knock from the science fiction radio program X-1, based on the short story by Fredric Brown. The original play first aired on radio in 1955. The last man on Earth sat alone in a room. He wasn't in his home, and he wasn't in a bunker. He was in a glass cage, a high-tech terrarium built by a race called the Zan. Outside the dome, the world was silent. No cars, no birds, no distant hum of a city. The Zan had cleared Earth of humanity like a gardener pulls weeds from a flowerbed, leaving only Walter Phelan as a curiosity, a single specimen to be watched, studied, and kept until the end of his days. Walter spent his hours staring back at them. The Zan weren't monsters with tentacles or green skin. They were shifting shadows, cold and logical beings that existed just beyond the glass. They watched him eat synthetic food, they watched him pace the small floor, and they waited for him to do something. Human. But Walter didn't give them the satisfaction. He simply sat, waiting for the inevitable boredom of immortality to set in for his captors. Then, one afternoon, the silence was broken. There was a knock on the door. It was Grace. The Zan had found another. A woman, terrified and displaced, brought to the dome to serve as Walter's mate. The Zan were scientists, after all. They wanted to see if the species would persist under observation, but Walter and Grace were not animals. As they sat in the sterile silence of their cage, they didn't talk of love or the future. They spoke in low whispers about the one thing the Zan couldn't comprehend, the human capacity for spite. They realized that their only power lay in refusing to be the entertainment. One night, the atmosphere in the dome shifted. Walter stood up and walked to the very center of the glass room. He looked up at the dark, shimmering shapes of the Zan gathered in the sky above him. He didn't beg for mercy, and he didn't ask for a larger cage. He simply smiled, a jagged, defiant human smile that seemed to make the very shadows outside ripple with unease. He turned to Grace, then back to the sky, and whispered, "If we are the last of our kind, then the story ends when we say it does." With a sudden, violent motion, Walter swung a heavy piece of metal he'd hidden away at the glass cage. There was a sharp, deafening crack that echoed through the silent world as the glass began to spiderweb. The Zan learned a hard lesson that night. Humans are poor pets, and we would rather shatter the world than live in a beautiful cage. The last man on Earth wasn't alone anymore. He was the one finally opening the door to let the darkness out. Thank you for listening to this narrated version of the play Knock from the science fiction radio program X-1, based on the short story by Fredric Brown. The original play first aired on the radio in 1955.